Hey Internet, so I wanted to throw together a little video about how I was able to resolve the squeaking issues on this Mamaroo Bassinet. Now I bought this thing used a couple of weeks ago, and overall we're super happy with it, the kid loves it, but it makes this terrible squeaking noise sometimes. Here's a quick demo of what that sounds like. I did see this video from BustaRiley about spacing out the bottom shield, but I tried it last week and it didn't resolve my problems, unfortunately. In the end, what worked for me was loosening the housing around the gears that drive the scissor lift. To the best of my knowledge, this should work with both the Uppababy and the 4Moms branded versions of this Mamaroo bassinet. Before we start, I do want to begin with a disclaimer. There's a lot of moving parts here. Remember that this thing is meant to lift a 10-pound baby, so it would be pretty unforgiving if you get your fingers caught in any of the mechanisms. Be very cautious, know your limits, and do this at your own risk. With all that said, let's get started. To start, after you remove the mattress, there's a total of 16 screws you'll need to undo. 8 on the top, and 8 on the bottom. You'll notice that there's a lot more of 8 screws total. You don't have to undo all of them. On the top, there's those 8 screws in the center, and on the bottom, there's 2 screws in the front and back, and 4 screws on the left and right. These are the only screws that you'll need to undo to get the thing open. These can all be removed with a simple Phillips head screwdriver, so you won't need anything fancy. Now at this point I had moved everything down into my shop. There's a lot of grease involved, so it's probably best to not make a mess of your bedroom or nursery. With all 16 screws removed, the entire bassinet and top shield will just lift off. At this point, the entire scissor mechanism is exposed, as you see here in the video. You'll also see 2 springs that run horizontally across the scissors. These help lift the weight of the bassinet to get some weight off of the motor. But I forgot to record this video before I'd taken those off. Carefully remove that spring using a pair of pliers, but be very careful. Springs are an easy opportunity to hurt yourself, so use caution. Next, to get access to the gear housing, we'll need to remove the black piece that holds the bassinet. There are 4 screws holding it to the white plastic pieces on either side. Remove those 4 screws, and then pop the white plastic pieces off. Now remove the axles in the front and back, which hold the scissor arms to the black piece. Keep in mind that there are nylon spacers in the scissor arms. It's important that you don't lose these. This is the point where I tried a bunch of things until I finally narrowed down the issue to the gear housing. I tried spacing out the shield like Riley's video suggested, and I even took apart the entire scissor lift and installed new Teflon washers on every single joint, and added new grease, but the squeaking just kept up. Ultimately, what I discovered was that if I pressed downward on the cam assembly, I could recreate the squeaking without the scissor lift even being connected. What you see here is exactly how I was able to recreate the noise. Unfortunately, I didn't get a video of it squeaking, but I'll add a squeaking sound effect to demonstrate exactly what I was seeing. The actual fix here was actually super unsatisfying. I opened up the housing, and when I put it back together, the squeaking was gone. I didn't actually change anything, but if I had to guess, the housing had probably flexed over time and was rubbing on the gear when the cam was on the downstroke. Loosening and retightening the 6 screws on the housing was all that it took. But for good measure, I opened up the housing, cleaned off the old grease that was on the gear and the worm gear, and applied new lithium grease to both. As you can see here, I did notice some grease on the housing, which is further evidence that the gear was rubbing up against the inside of the housing. I'm not sure if that was the cause of the squeaking, but I wiped the grease off and closed everything back up. From here, putting everything back together is the exact same process, but in reverse. Put the housing back on the gear, put the axle back in place, connect the cam to the axle, and screw the white caps back in. Before putting the rest of the bassinet together, I want to talk briefly about the changes I made to the shield. All credit for this part goes to BustaRiley in his video. I'll link his video in the description below. Riley pointed out that the screws holding the shield in place are a little bit too long, which means the shield is able to wiggle on the screws. To fix that, he suggested adding some spacers onto the shield, like this. These nuts here are acting as spacers and don't actually thread onto the screws because they're a bit too big. I just used these because I didn't have any spacers on hand. Riley also pointed out these plastic posts, which rub against the bottom of the shield in a few marked areas. There's some orange grease from the factory on the bottom of the shield, but it's a good idea to add more yourself. I also added a little bit of resin on top of the posts to make them smoother where they rub against the shield. Like I said, these changes didn't help with the squeaking I was experiencing, but they won't hurt either, so it's worth doing while you have the whole machine open. Oh, and don't forget to put the spring back in place. I didn't remember to do this until after the shield was back on, so here's a clip of me really struggling to put everything back together while there's a bunch of plastic in the way. The last thing to do is to reassemble the whole bassinet. Screw the shield in place around the black piece, and then screw the bassinet back on top. And there you have it. I hope these changes were helpful if you were experiencing a squeaking Mamaroo bassinet. To summarize, the only crucial thing was loosening that clear gear housing a little bit to relieve the pressure off the gear. My bassinet is running quietly now, and I hope yours is too. Thanks for watching.